Because obviously at the beginning I said that we were very aware that sometimes assessment was taking too much away from the education that children were receiving and taking adults away from that direct interaction that we know is so important. But clearly assessment is important. So I just want to explain a little bit about that for you. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that, as it says on this slide, summative grade descriptors are not a curriculum and they're not progression. So, for example, the early learning goals at the end of the foundation stage are not themselves good things on which to base your curriculum. And that's even more important with the revised EYFS because, for example, in mathematics, there is no goal in mathematics for shape, space, and measure. Now, that isn't a problem for us at all for Ofsted. That's because the EYFSP, the assessment that happens at the end, is simply, if you like, a health check. It's to make sure that children are generally where they need to be. It is not determining the curriculum in exactly the same way that whatever comes up in a GCSE exam is checking, if you like, where children's understanding and knowledge is. It's not determining everything that was supposed to have been taught during that time. So the curriculum in the early years foundation stage is determined by those big comments, those big, if you like, descriptors in the actual early years foundation stage document itself, which set out the programs of learning. The goals are smaller things which in the grand scheme of things do not determine that curriculum. And they shouldn't be seen as determining the curriculum. And that's really what the point of this slide is. It's not a substitute for a curriculum to simply take out the things that are going to be assessed and say this is what the children need to learn. And also that diminishes the role of the early years foundation stage in a child's education, because the early years foundation stage, like Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, all of them all play a very important part in a child's long-term education. And they all do different things. What happens in the early years foundation stage, it cannot be repeated in Key Stage 2. It's hard to repeat it or cover it in Key Stage 1 because we're dealing with children at a certain time and stage in their development. It's why the prime areas of learning are so important for those our youngest children, and it's why they really need to get the support and development that they need. Things like the vocabulary that children have developed from their communication and language, the personal skills they've developed from their PSED, their ability to feel able and confident to start and finish an activity in a classroom. All of these sort of skills and knowledge that they need to gain from their early education is enormously important as they move on through. And sometimes when we see the early years foundation stage as simply being finished, if you like, when we assess it at the end of a child's reception year, we diminish not only how we understand that curriculum, but we also limit the ability of that curriculum to support children later on. And often when we look at children who struggle as they move up through a primary school, it will be to do with things to do with their prime areas of learning, to do with their vocabulary, to do with their comprehension, to do with their ability to operate within a school environment in a safe and happy way. So it's really important that we make sure that children get what they deserve and the curriculum that they're entitled to when they're in those early years.